Stand by. We're going live. We're going live. 10, 9, going live. 7, 6, 5, going live. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, welcome to 10 Seconds to Air. I'm Alita Guillen. Today's guest is someone who is communicating with millions of people about a topic that many of us avoid talking about: death. We all have loved ones who we will see pass, and we ourselves will die at some point, yet we rarely talk about death. Now, before you skip to the next episode, this is actually an uplifting and important conversation with someone who has found a way to communicate about death in a sunny way. So please don't go anywhere. Hadley Vlahos is a registered nurse who provides end-of-life care to patients. She's also called a hospice nurse. She is also the author of the New York Times best-selling book, The In-Between, where she shares her unforgettable encounters during life's final moments. She has been featured on Good Morning America, NBC News, Oprah Daily, Newsweek, and there's now a scripted show in the works about her life. But her biggest following is on TikTok. Yes, millions of people watch her on TikTok. Stick with me here. Hadley is an amazing communicator and an angel to those who are at the end of their life. Here now is registered hospice nurse Hadley Vlahos. Hi, Hadley. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Well, I can't wait for people to hear you speak because I think you have found a way to bring sunshine into darkness.
Oh, thank you. I try very hard to.
How do you do that?
You know that quote? It's not my quote, but I think about it all the time that says, people will always forget what you said to them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. I think about that all the time. And also just, I try to leave everyone a little bit better than whenever I first encountered them.
Well, that's a little bit interesting considering you encounter people at the end of their life. So when you do leave them, they've passed.
Yes, I still think I'll see them again one day, though. So it still matters to me just as much.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with the question about what goes through your mind 10 seconds before you either meet someone at the end of their life, you meet them for the first time, or your moments before guiding them into passing. What goes through your mind?
I will think a lot about gratitude and how grateful I am to have gotten the opportunity to be someone's last nurse. It's a privilege and it's an honor. And I see myself as a facilitator for them to go to whatever comes next. And I believe it's an honor, and I'll usually thank them for allowing me to be that person.
How'd you get into this work? This is not, my guess is you didn't go to nursing school and say, that is what I want to do. Or maybe you did. How'd you start?
I did not, actually. I wanted to be a labor and delivery nurse at the opposite end.
Wow.
And
yeah.
I did not get the job, which was a blessing in disguise. But at the time, I thought my life was over. So I took a couple of different jobs, but ended up in a nursing home as a manager. And that is where I saw hospice for the first time, because we had hospice patients in the nursing home. And I saw the nurses go sit one-on-one with the patients, whereas every other type of nursing I've done, I have so many patients that I'm trying to juggle, and I'm just so overwhelmed. And I said, I don't know what kind of nursing that is, but whatever kind of nursing where you can sit one-on-one with one patient at a time, that is what I want to be doing. And so I took a job in hospice, and that was 8 years ago this month, I guess. Crazy.
And you thought, great, I'm going to do this because I can give more attention to one patient.
Yes, but I totally believe that this was the path that I was meant to go down, and it completely changed my life in so many different ways.
So you start that work, you decide to have one patient, you get there, and are you surprised by what this work is, how different it is from labor and delivery?
Yes, I was very surprised, but in a really, really good way. It's very interesting to be able to follow someone, even though I only have them for a few months at a time. It's a very different type of nursing to be in people's homes.
Yeah.
It's a very intimate type setting, and to get to really follow them until the end. It's very rewarding.
let's go to the book, because we get into all the different types of people that you do get to work with. And I know from listening, I listened to your audiobook, and I guess I just didn't, I'm probably like a lot of people, I don't really think about what that experience is and all the different homes that you do go into, and they're not all the same, and everyone has a different story. So you write the book. It's now a New York Times bestseller called The In-Between, a collection of your experiences in these final moments. Why did you write the book?
Well, I had started on social media. I was really surprised that people liked hearing my stories. I was very used to people saying, I don't want to talk about death whenever I was in social situations, or to say your job's so sad, your job's so depressing. But I say that I found my people on social media, people who wanted to hear about it because they either were interested in it or they had gone through it themselves, and they were just wondering how other people's experiences were, because it is kind of isolating when you're only your own experience in your home. And so I was shocked to have all of these people who were interested. I had always wanted to be an author, and there was only so much I could tell in a 60-second TikTok. And so I said, well, if I could write a book, I could really put people into my shoes to understand not just clips of these stories, but the entire patient and what I experienced and why it impacted me so much.
How many different stories do you tell in the book?
There's 12 patients, so 12 stories.
12 patients. Start with the first one. Do you remember the first time that you experienced death?
Yes. Yeah. My chapter 1, it was my first death as a hospice nurse. And it was a pretty typical hospice patient death. But for me, it was very, very, very different. She was seeing her deceased sister. And I was there with my manager because I'm still following people around, learning the ropes. And I thought that she was hallucinating, because in any other type of nursing, if you're seeing something that I don't see, that's a hallucination. And I thought we needed to medicate her. And I start talking to all the other people around me who have worked in hospice for a very long time. And they say, no, this is super common, and they're calm and they're okay. And we believe that their loved ones are just coming to guide them. And I got to be that guide for the daughter, who was really not ready to lose her mom yet. And it was a beautiful experience.
Elaborate on that. What do you mean by beautiful experience?
It was really beautiful. Her deceased sister came to get her. I saw her be very at peace with this as she talked to her deceased sister. Her daughter was a little bit concerned. She was very tired because her mom was up at all hours of the night talking to her deceased sister, and she thought it was a hallucination. And through my manager walking me through what she believed was her deceased sister coming to get her, I was able to be there with the patient for an extended amount of time, let the daughter get some rest, and then her daughter was able to be there and hold her mom's hand at the end and tell her how much she loved her and that it was okay for her to go be with her sister.
You mentioned that she's seeing her sister, but you're not calling it a hallucination. Okay,
correct.
Explain that. What's the difference? It's not a hallucination when they're seeing something that's not actually there?
Yeah, we see a difference between hallucinations and seeing deceased loved ones. I thought it was a hallucination at first. But what we're seeing that's different is that usually when people are seeing hallucinations, it's very stressful. Like they're seeing spiders on the wall, or they know that that person is not supposed to be there. So it's scary for them and they're distressed. So we give them medications. But whenever people see their deceased loved ones, it doesn't matter what their background is. It doesn't matter their religious beliefs, no beliefs at all, what they believe. And it brings this sense of calmness with it and peace, even if people were scared beforehand about dying and having anxiety about it. It's like these people come, they see these people, and then they're okay.
So it's not a hallucination? You're not calling that a hallucination?
We don't call it hallucinations. We say that they are seeing their deceased loved ones, even in our charting.
What are some of the commonalities that you see when you go into homes and in this moment that the rest of us don't get to see?
There are many. I would say a big commonality that people don't realize is that it is more rare to have families that have it all together, like what you would normally see on TV of the Brady Bunch or like the typical family. It's super normal for families to not get along, for people to be upset with each other. It more common than not. And I see a lot of shame and embarrassment whenever I come in, where they're like, I'm so sorry that my sister's being this way, for example, or whatever it is. It's a very high stress time, and it's going to bring out the worst in people. But I think people should know that if I walk into 5 homes that day, it's likely that all 5 homes, there will be family issues in every single home.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've made a lot of people feel better right now already.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of times someone's not talking to someone and there's stress in there. How do you navigate that?
I try to as delicately as possible. Usually I'll let people vent whenever I feel like it's appropriate. Sometimes just being a listening ear and an empathetic ear can really do a lot more good than people realize. And just saying, yeah, you know what, that's super frustrating. And just one yesterday, I was in the home. It was the brother who doesn't live here is the one who gets to make the decisions. He's the power of attorney. But this younger sister, she's the one who has been caring for her mom for 5 years, lives with her, and she has to call her brother who lives in another state every single time she wants to make a decision. And I just listened to her and said, yeah, that's super frustrating. I would be so frustrated if I was in your shoes too. That is so frustrating. And I think just sometimes being able to vent can really help.
What's your relationship with the patients when you go in with them? And how well, let me ask you this question before you get to that one, is how far before death do you meet these people?
It varies so much. So hospice is defined as not pursuing curative treatment and having 6 months or less to live, but that is not an exact science. We have guidelines that I think make it pretty close, but sometimes it can be more than 6 months. And then, of course, sometimes I'll only have people for like a few hours. So it really can vary so much. I would say on average, if you take out those people who are just a day or less, I will usually have patients for 3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And they're aware of what's going on, right?
Absolutely. Of course, I have patients with dementia and different neurological diseases, but yeah, they definitely know what's going on if that's not their diagnosis.
And are they receptive to you?
Yes, they are. They usually like the help. Occasionally, people don't like me at first, and I always just say, it's not jail. It's not hospice jail. You can come off at any time. So why don't we come in and I'll start coming? And if you decide that this isn't for you, all you have to do is make a phone call and you're not on hospice anymore. Mm-hmm. But let me come and try to help you, and let's get some baths, and let me try to get your medication sorted. And whenever I handle it that way, instead of just being like, well, this is what you need, you don't have any other options, which sometimes is the truth. Sometimes they don't have another option, but giving a choice and making people feel like they do have control really goes a long way. And in those situations, I've never had anyone come off hospice if I let them be the one to decide.
Right. And I thought it was interesting in the book, you talk about your patients and then you talk about their family members. And it seemed to me that the patients, and this could be just, my perception, or this really does happen, I don't know. It seemed to me that the patients were more, peaceful than actually the family members.
Yes. I would say that happens most of the time. It's usually very hard for the family. It's hard for them to watch their loved one go through a terminal disease. And most of the time, well, all the time, if the patient can make their decision, they're the one who says, I want hospice. This is what I want. And a lot of times the family members are not happy about that. Mm-hmm. And it's society. It's this culture we have around fighting and giving up and things like that.
In this country, we don't talk about death a whole lot. And it also brings me to kind of the why you've had so much momentum and so much traction with this. But why is it that we don't talk about death? What do you think's going on that we have this struggle? Even, I'm going to admit, even when I was doing the research with you at the beginning, I was thinking like, oh, wow, is this going to be dark? And as you spoke and as I got into your stories one after another, I felt uplifted. But that wasn't my reaction going in, which I imagine some people, that's why I said in the introduction here, don't go anywhere, please stay with us. But why is it, do you think, that we have this sort of aversion to talking about death?
I think it makes people uncomfortable because there's not ever a solution to it, as opposed to we could talk about anything else and say, well, you might have to make a choice or this might be difficult, but there's usually some sort of solution or conclusion. But with death, we just know that this is something that's going to happen to everyone and no one usually wants to die. So it's just this looming fear of something that we can't really solve. And so I think most people just avoid thinking about it, talking about it, thinking that that will make it better. But in reality, studies show that that makes it worse. And whenever you don't have the information on what is typically going to happen, like the vast majority of America is going to die in like a hospice type situation. Our brains naturally fill in with other information, and that can be scary based on what we normally see on TV or hear about, because we're hearing about the outliers and the really scary cases. And so we have fear around it.
So when you say we focus on other things that aren't really what happens, what things are we focusing on that we shouldn't be? Like set us straight here with that. Let's fix this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe last I looked, a little over 90% of us are going to die in like an old age hospice situation or terminal disease, a slower death. But over 80% of what we see on TV are traumatic deaths. So we're not really understanding. There was just a study with this nonprofit called Endwell that I just spoke for in LA. They're wonderful. And they did a study showing that over 80% of what we're shown on TV is violent and traumatic, and how it has shifted our perception of what death is.
And that's not how most of us are going to go anyway. So okay. So once we understand that that's not going to happen, help us get to the time, those 6 months of that time. How should we start? Help me reframe those moments, whether it's that I'm caring for someone or I'm in that space with that person, or it's me. Help us in those moments.
Well, one of the big things for me, why I'm such a huge advocate for it, is because we have the choice at the end. If we know that we have a terminal disease, we know what's coming, we have the choice to make decisions like hospice, where we say, I know that this is coming. I know that this is what's going to happen. I want to be comfortable at the end, or I want to go on a trip one last time. I don't want to be in the hospital anymore. This is how I want to spend my last few months of my life. And unfortunately, whenever we have this culture of fighting and don't give up and you can do this, then many people won't make those choices for themselves because they feel like they're giving up or they're doing something wrong by choosing hospice care or choosing whatever they want. And so they will end up fighting until the end. But whenever we educate ourselves and we know that this is an option, then we can say, okay, the time has come. I know that I cannot change the outcome here. And personally, I want to be comfortable at the end. That's what really matters to me. I want to be in my own home. I want to be with my friends and family. And all of us, not all of us, but many of us will have that choice to make. So if I have 3 to 4 months with someone, then I have a chance to get to know them and their preferences, so that whenever something does come up, like what we call a pain crisis or whatever it is, and I'm coming in your home in the middle of the night, I already know exactly what you want. And I am not having to waste 15 minutes or 30 minutes saying, well, what medications do you have? And what have we done in the past? And what is this? I would know, okay, this is what we're doing. This is the plan. We talked about this. We prepared for this day. We knew this was coming. This is what we're doing. And it will make the whole process much better.
So when you first get in, you have this conversation with the patient, not necessarily the family, but with the patient, because they're pretty lucid when you get there.
If the patient can make their own decisions, they have to. Mm-hmm. The family's not allowed to do it for them. If the patient cannot make their own decisions, then it'll go to the family, which, a lot of people do have dementia or neurological deficits, but I'd say about 60 to 70% of patients, it's the patient that's telling me what they want. And I ask every single patient whenever I first meet them, what do you want? What is your goal while you're on hospice care? Most people say, I just want to be comfortable, or I want my pain level. My pain level is always at a 7 out of 10, and I'd like to get it to a 5 out of 10. It varies for every single person, but I ask everyone that question.
Wow. If you're in there for 3 to 4 months, what relationship do you end up having with this person? You must really get to know them.
I do. And I get very close to many of them. It definitely depends on the patient and their personality. But it is much easier in the home to make what I call bids for connection. Whereas I'm constantly...
what did you call that? What did you say?
Bids for connection. So I'm just constantly throwing out these attempts to connect with them. In the hospital, it's a little bit harder to find things because you're in this sterile environment. But if I'm in the home, it's easy for me to be like, oh, you have a dachshund? I had a dachshund growing up. Mm. Or, oh, that picture, is that at this lake? I've been there. I went there the other day. And so I am constantly looking for these ways to connect with patients on a different level and get them to ultimately start telling me about the stories and what's really important to them.
I also heard you say in the audiobook that nurses are not supposed to share their stories. That really stood out to me. So you try to get information out of them, but not share too much about yourself. Why is that?
It's definitely a delicate balance. It can be hard at first for newer nurses. I've definitely found that. We just don't ever want to be burdening the patient with our own problems. They have enough going on. And sometimes that can be a hard line to walk where you're wanting to have them open up to you about things, but we don't want to say like, oh yeah, I'm in a fight with my husband and why don't you listen to this? So it's, that's where some people can cross the line sometimes, or talking about things like, yes, we're so short staffed. I'm so busy. Well, I will hear that where nurses will do that. And we just cannot cross those lines and make them feel like they aren't safe or cared for. So I try to stick to things where you can connect with them without putting your own burdens on them.
Yeah, well, I guess that does make sense. Okay, I want to get to your TikTok account. Explain this. You have how many followers on TikTok?
1.7 million.
1.7 million followers on TikTok. And did I see that some of your posts have reached over 50 million views?
Probably. I don't even know, to be honest.
Okay, I did see that. I'm going to tell you that has happened. How did this happen?
Yeah, TikTok was an accident. I had always wanted to share my stories, and it was always a desire to really share everything that had been going on because these patients had really affected my life in a super positive way. But I didn't see anyone talking about hospice on social media. It was an accident. This was the very, very, very beginning of the pandemic. I made a video for my friends and family, just basically sharing what was going on with the pandemic and having kids and working in healthcare. I just looked up video editor on the App Store. TikTok popped up. TikTok was not big at all at the time. And the only way to save it used to be as well, was to post it. And so it got 2 million views, I think, in 24 hours. And I was like, what is this? This is crazy. And people just started asking me questions in the comments, and I just started making videos and answering them.
Wow. So the first post that you made was for your family?
Yes, I just wanted to save a video to post to my private Facebook and Instagram.
And it had over 2 million views.
Yes.
What was that
crazy.
post? What was it?
It was just me talking about how the kids, because whenever the pandemic was all starting up, the kids went and stayed with my parents for a little bit just because we didn't know what was going on. And I just said, didn't ever think this would happen, but I promised that I'd care for people and I'd be there for you. And that's what I'm going to do.
Wow. Okay. So that happens. And then there's a second post. You say to yourself, what's going through your mind then?
So people started asking me what kind of nurse I was. And I didn't really know what to do or how to handle it because people normally don't have a good reaction. So I made a post saying, I work in hospice. I actually think I have some pretty cool stories. Does anyone want to hear them? And tons of people said, yes, my dad died in hospice. My aunt did. Please tell me. I want to hear them. So I just started on my lunch break, just pulling up my camera and just talking and sharing my stories. And it's advanced since then. I really learned social media for sure, and how to really get my stories out there. But that is how it started.
Yes. And now you do these sort of you play two parts, like skits, where you do skits. Mm-hmm. Explain the last post.
The last one would have been about announcing the movie deal. I do skits all the time.
Wait, Hadley. Now you have a movie deal?
Oh, sorry, TV deal. TV deal. I just call it movie TV.
Okay,
yes.
TV. Well, the movie deal. The movie deal, I'm guessing, is coming. So let's start with the TV
deal. Announcing the TV deal. So I just said that I was talking to my younger self whenever I was really burnt out. And the skits really do well. People really connect. And most of the time it's situations with my hospice patients where I'm sharing what it's like to be in these rooms. And people seem to really connect with them and they really love seeing what my job is like.
And what are they saying? What's the feedback you're getting? What do they want to know?
Most people are just like, oh, wow, like this really touched my heart. A lot of people will share their own stories, which is really where it gets very powerful for me, is whenever it goes beyond people just talking to me and is instead people sharing their own story of something that happened to their loved one in hospice. And then people underneath them start replying and people start connecting with each other. Mm-hmm. And it becomes this space for other people to find each other. And those are my favorite posts, whenever it is no longer just about me trying to reply to all these people and instead just making a space for people to connect with each other.
Now you have a scripted show in the works.
Yes.
You have all these people talking to each other. We said earlier that people don't want to really discuss death, but maybe that's not true. Why do you think there's so much interest in you and what you're doing?
I think that people want to know about death. I think as a society as a whole, I've seen a huge shift in the last 3 years of people just being curious about things they don't want to know about. I think it's great. I see that in many different areas of culture and really just everyone trying to educate themselves more about things that they don't know about. And I think that's wonderful.
When you heard about the TV deal, what'd you think?
It was quite a process, actually. There were a few different studios who wanted the rights to it.
Whoa,
so I got
whoa.
It's exciting. Yeah. So I got to talk to many different people and decide who I wanted to go with, which was wonderful. Something that I really looked for was people who had their own experience where they had been in hospice before with their own loved ones, so they understood it. That was very important to me because I wanted to accurately reflect what hospice really is like.
Mm-hmm. How involved will you be in this process with the scripted show?
I am an executive producer, so
wow.
I'm not moving to LA, but hopefully pretty involved.
You are having a huge amount of success based on this life and path that you have chosen, but you didn't start off like that.
No, not at all.
And how did this all start?
Yeah, I went off to college, Florida State University, with dreams of being an author. just as many young 18, 19-year-olds do. And I ended up pregnant at 19, decided to have my son, and decided also that being an author was not going to cut it in terms of being able to provide as a very young single mom. So I applied to and got into nursing school. And that was a wonderful option. And I'm so grateful. But I did do it as a means to survive and support myself and my son. And I fully believe that this was the path that I was meant to take, and that is what I needed to go through.
And you talk about that path not being so easy because some of the people around you weren't so nice.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that were not very nice about it.
Tell a story about that, because I think that's hopeful for other people out there who might be going through a hard time, who realize that, it's not really about the people around you and what they believe in you. It's about how you believe in you. So share with us a story or two about how unkind some of the people around you were.
Yeah. So the one in particular that really stands out to me was actually the nurse that was working the reception desk at the OBGYN office. I was on Medicaid because I could not afford health insurance. And I gave her the card, and she just turned to her coworker and said, people who can't afford to be parents should not be allowed to be parents. And I froze. It really, really, really stung. Yeah. And I ended up working with that nurse later when I was in the hospital. So I got to know her, never said anything to her about that. But what I really learned was that she was really, really, really hurting as a person. And it wasn't ever about me. Mm-hmm. She just really had a really, tough life. And she decided to take it out on other people. But I made the decision that I would make sure that people didn't ever feel that way under my care. And for that, I'm very thankful for her that I got to experience that. And I think about that. And whenever I'm having a bad day, I think back to it and go, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I need to put it aside.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like there have been a lot of experiences in your life that you don't let pass by. You take as learning moments, including the patients that you work with at end of life. There is one patient that I think of, I think it's Elizabeth, that you talk about in the book, that was very meaningful to you and changed your life going forward. Can you just give us a little snippet of what that experience was?
Yeah. Elizabeth was younger for a hospice patient, her 40s, never married, had a few friends, a family that was kind of here or there. And at the end of her life, I was sitting there at her bedside, and she asked if she could share some advice with me. And I said yes. And she said that she saw herself in me, and that she had spent so much of her life on the treadmill, just really obsessing about her body. And that if she could go back, she wished that she would have eaten the cake. That eat the cake is the phrase that she told me that really, really, really stuck with me. And really just seeing the circumstances of her basically sharing with me, I didn't ever go to the beach with my friends, and I'd skip birthday dinners because I didn't want to have to do anything I wasn't comfortable with outside of her eating disorder. Mm-hmm. And she didn't have any friends that I ever saw come visit her on her deathbed. It was that severe. And I myself had an eating disorder, and through her and therapy, I was able to overcome that.
Mm-hmm. It made you think about your own experience and where you want to be. And you do say, you have this phrase now, you say, eat cake. Eat the
cake. And I think it applies to many things in life, just enjoying life instead of just caring about these external factors, just living life to the fullest, essentially.
And now you have 2 more children, right?
I do. I have 3 kids.
You have 3 kids now. How are you managing all this, Hadley?
It's hard.
It's hard.
I'm trying.
Right. And with all that's going on with you, you are still seeing patients, right?
Yes. I work PRN. It's as needed. So I just tell them my availability each week. I saw patients yesterday. Mm-hmm. Right now is our busy time. I know most people wouldn't think that hospice has a busy time.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
So the holidays, people will try to come on hospice to get out of the hospital so that they're not in there. They're home for the holidays is what we call it. Mm-hmm. And then usually people will hold on through December, and then we'll have a lot of deaths in January, which is also very busy. So now through, beginning of February is our busy time. So I'm working a little bit more than usual right now.
Wow. Okay. And what's coming up for you other than the book, continuing with the videos on TikTok? What else are you hoping for in 2024?
Well, I'm hoping to start doing some event fundraisers for my nonprofit. I'm trying to open a nonprofit hospice house. It's more family centered. Right now, they're very patient centered. I just say it's like Ronald McDonald House, but the other way in age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to open up my first one of those. So I hope in 2024 to start doing some fundraising events. I'm working with my team right now. So fingers crossed we can get that together.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you want to touch on or go into a little more?
That I can think of.
No? You sure?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And before we go, I want to just recap for people who are listening and they want to know, what they can do. They're not in hospice. Maybe they are, but let's take it to the people who are not in hospice, who maybe have a loved one who might be going into it. We know that that's going to, now you've said like 80-90% of us are actually going to have that experience as opposed to what we see on TV. How can we approach this in a better way, have a different mindset, maybe on a daily basis? What tangible thing could we do today, tomorrow, to make us experience end of life better than we do now?
I'd say the biggest thing is to not avoid it. Start thinking about what a beautiful end looks like to you, because it's very different for every single person. And then whenever your loved one does come to you and say, this is what a beautiful end looks like to me, make it happen. Respect them. And then on a daily basis, eat the cake, enjoy life. Personally, I think a lot about, one day I'm going to be on my own deathbed talking to my hospice nurse, looking back at these days, and will I be happy reflecting on today or yesterday or tomorrow and what I'm doing?
Oh, thank you, Hadley. Hadley Vlahos, the author of The In-Between and widely successful on TikTok, with a show coming, so much more from you. I'm sure we're going to be hearing about you a lot more. And thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much.